You paid for the phone. You paid for the car. You paid for the game. So they're yours, right? Well, try replacing a part the manufacturer doesn't approve. Stop paying for the software that runs your work, or open a game you bought after the company switches off its servers. The object may still be sitting in your house, but the part that made it valuable can disappear with a software update, a canceled subscription, or a change in the terms of service. And that reveals one of the quietest changes in the modern economy. Companies no longer have to keep the product. They can sell it to you and still keep control. The strange part is that this didn't happen through one massive conspiracy or one dramatic law. It happened one convenient feature at a time, and once you understand why companies love this model, you start seeing it everywhere. For most of modern history, buying something was a fairly boring transaction. You handed over money, the seller handed over the product. The relationship mostly ended there. If you bought a chair, the company couldn't charge you again every month for sitting on it. If you bought a record, the shop couldn't enter your house 3 years later and remove a song. You could keep it, lend it, repair it, or sell it. That kind of ownership gave the customer control. But from a company's point of view, it had one annoying weakness: you only paid once. After the sale, the company had to convince you to come back. Maybe it released a better version. Maybe your old one broke. Maybe advertising persuaded you that beige was out and brushed silver was in. But every new payment required another decision from you. Subscriptions changed that. Instead of repeatedly asking customers to buy, companies could turn one decision into a stream of automatic payments. Revenue became easier to predict, customers became harder to lose, and the end of a sale became the beginning of a much longer relationship. Adobe is one of the clearest examples. For years, people bought a version of Photoshop or Creative Suite and kept using it. Adobe might release a new version, but customers could decide whether the upgrade was worth paying for. Then, Adobe moved its creative software to Creative Cloud. The expensive one-time purchase became a smaller, recurring payment. That made the software easier to start using, but it also changed who had the power. Under the old model, refusing to upgrade meant keeping the version you already owned. Under the subscription model, refusing to pay means losing access. By Adobe's 2025 financial year, subscriptions produced roughly 96% of its revenue. For Adobe, this wasn't a side business, it became the business. Software also introduced a clever legal distinction. When you buy a physical object, you normally expect ownership, but many digital products aren't technically sold to you at all. They're licensed. Steam's subscriber agreement says its games and services are licensed, not sold. Apple's media terms also describe a mix of buying, renting, subscribing, and licensing, and warn that purchased content may become unavailable if the platform loses the rights to distribute it. That doesn't mean a company can randomly delete everything tomorrow, but it does mean the word buy on the screen may promise less than the word buy in your head. You think you bought a permanent copy. The contract may say you received conditional access. Ubisoft's game The Crew showed what that difference looks like in practice. Players paid for the game, but because it depended on company servers, Ubisoft's 2024 server shutdown made it unplayable. The plastic console remained. The files may have remained. The receipt definitely remained. The game did not. This is the new ownership gap. You can possess the object without controlling whether it continues to work. That gap becomes even stranger when digital control is wrapped around a physical product. A modern smart device isn't one product, it's a stack. There's the hardware you can touch, then there's the software inside it, the account needed to activate it, the app used to control it, the cloud server processing its data, and the company's permission to keep the whole stack connected. You may own the bottom layer while renting access to everything above it. Google's early Nest Learning thermostats are a good example. When Google ended software support in 2025, the thermostats didn't suddenly stop controlling temperature. Owners could still use them locally. But remote phone control and Google Assistant features disappeared. So the hardware survived, while much of the smart product people thought they had purchased did not. Cars are moving in the same direction. Tesla sells premium connectivity as an ongoing subscription. That can be reasonable. Live data and cellular service cost money to provide. But the larger trend is what matters. Once a car becomes a computer on wheels, the manufacturer can keep selling features long after the vehicle leaves the dealership. The car sale no longer has to be the end of the transaction. It can become the entrance fee. And software gives manufacturers something physical products never gave them before: the ability to decide after the sale which functions stay active. It's tempting to explain all of this as corporate greed, but that answer is too easy and not very useful. Companies prefer controlled access because it solves several business problems at once. First, recurring payments make revenue predictable. A company with 10 million subscribers can estimate next month's income more confidently than a company waiting for 10 million people to choose another one-time purchase. Second, subscriptions increase what businesses call customer lifetime value. The goal isn't simply to earn money when you buy the product, it's to keep earning from you for as long as you use it. Third, control makes leaving expensive. The more files, purchases, settings, devices, and habits tied to one company's ecosystem, the harder it becomes to switch. You aren't only canceling a service, you may be abandoning years of work and rebuilding your digital life somewhere else. And finally, software lets companies divide one product into smaller things they can sell separately. A feature that once arrived permanently with the object can now be activated, limited, upgraded, or bundled into a premium plan. From the company side, this is excellent economics. From the customer side, it can feel like buying the same product in pieces forever. Nowhere is the argument over ownership clearer than repair. If a product is truly yours, it seems reasonable that you should be able to fix it or pay someone you trust to fix it. But modern repair often requires more than a screwdriver and a replacement part. It may require diagnostic software, service manuals, firmware, calibration tools, or a digital process that pairs the new component with the device. Without those tools, you can physically install the part and still have a product that refuses to accept it. This is why farmers, independent repair shops, phone owners, and lawmakers have ended up in the same fight. John Deere became a major symbol of that conflict. Farmers owned extremely expensive machines, but critics argued they didn't have equal access to the software and diagnostic tools needed for many repairs. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission sued Deere in 2025, alleging that its restrictions pushed farmers toward authorized dealers. In July 2026, Deere agreed to settle with the FTC and 5 states, committing to expand access to repair and diagnostic tools. That case matters because tractors are about as physical as products get. They're massive machines working in real fields, but even there, ownership can be limited by an invisible software layer. Governments have started responding. California, Minnesota, Colorado, and the European Union have introduced or strengthened repair rules aimed at parts, documentation, software access, and unreasonable barriers. The debate isn't simply about who can replace a screen or fix a tractor. It's about whether buying a product should give you meaningful control over its useful life. There is another side to this. Not every subscription is a scam, and not every cloud-connected feature can be maintained forever for free. Subscriptions can reduce the upfront cost of expensive software. They can fund security patches, new features, customer support, cloud storage, and live services. A company paying every month for servers and mobile data has a legitimate reason to charge for an ongoing service. And some products genuinely improve after purchase because the manufacturer continues developing them. The problem begins when an ongoing service and a basic product are blurred together. Paying for live traffic data is one thing. Paying to keep a feature that already exists inside hardware you purchased feels different. Losing cloud extras after support ends is frustrating. Losing the product's core function is far more serious. The real question isn't, are subscriptions bad? It's this: after the customer pays, what power should the company still have? Can it make the product useless? Can it block independent repair? Can it remove a digital purchase? Can it move a feature you already use behind another payment? And did you clearly understand any of that before clicking buy? Controlled access doesn't only change what we pay. It can change how long products last. If repairs are too restricted, too extensive, or simply unavailable, replacing the product becomes easier than keeping it alive. The world generated 62 million tons of electronic waste in 2022. Only 22.3% was formally collected and recycled. By 2030, global e-waste is projected to reach 82 million tons. Not all of that comes from subscriptions or software locks, but shorter product lives and limited repair options are part of the problem. There's also a subtler cost. When everything becomes a service, monthly payments stop feeling like individual purchases. $5 here, $10 there. Storage, entertainment, software, security, connectivity, premium features. Each charge looks small. Together, they turn ordinary life into a collection of bills that never end. And unlike an object you finish paying for, access produces no finish line. So, do companies want you to own nothing? Not exactly. They're usually happy for you to own the shell, the phone, the thermostat, the tractor, the car. What they want to keep is leverage. Control over the account, control over the software, control over the server, control over the repair, control over the features that can be sold to you again. That is the real shift, not from owning everything to owning nothing, but from owning a complete product to owning the least powerful layer of it. And the next time a company puts a bright blue buy button on the screen, the most important question may not be how much it costs. It may be what exactly will still be mine if the company changes its mind.